All right, so we have Mike Tomlin's press conference for Week 16 going to Baltimore, coming off the loss to the Eagles. So we're going to get some information, hopefully, about T.J. Watt and maybe some other Steelers that are injured, like George Pickens, who I think we desperately need back for this game.
Good afternoon. Quick turnaround on a 6-day cycle this week. But I'll give you a quick assessment of our last performance. Like I mentioned last night post-game, it just wasn't a good game for us. It wasn't a good game for us from a coaching perspective, from a strategy perspective. It wasn't a good game for us in terms of playing and executing. We owned that. It manifests itself in a lot of ways, and oftentimes, even though it was a poor performance by us, a game can be summed up in a limited number of plays. That's just how close it is in our game at this level. The difference between squashing grapes and drinking wine is that tight. And as poorly as we executed, both playing and coaching, I thought the game could be summarized into a couple of red zone possessions that we didn't maximize.
Yeah.
We had the ball in their territory when we had the fumble recovery on our punt team, and we settled for a field goal. And then in the second half, we were driving into the red zone after a big play on a flea flicker, and we fumbled the ball. And, when you're playing good people, as the road gets narrow, you got to maximize those red zone possessions, and I thought those points were significant. On the defensive side of the ball, there were three specifically that I'm thinking of, possession downs, where we had a ball carrier netted short of the line of the game, and he made us miss. And move the chains. Not only do you lose that down, and that's why we call them weighty downs, but those were drive-producing type plays and time of possession type plays. You make those plays so you don't have to make plays that follow, and we didn't. We didn't tackle well enough, specifically in those instances, and that's why time of possession was the way it was. That's how they were able to possess the ball and thus produce points. And so, for me, you got to play well. You got to strategize well. If you don't, you position yourself to not be fortunate, and that could describe some of the things that transpired in that game. I know a lot's been said about, some controversial officiating calls in the game, but I just believe when you play well, those things get minimized, and when you play poorly, those things get highlighted. We're not going to hide behind those things or seek comfort relative to those things. Things like that happen week in and week out, but when you're playing well, it doesn't become a talking point, or specifically, it becomes less significant in our eyes in terms of how the game unfolds. And so from my perspective, I think a big component of us turning the page this week is getting focused on the things that we own in that performance and making necessary corrections, while at the same time understanding the awesome opportunity and preparing for the awesome opportunity that we have this week. From a health perspective, we had some guys carrying some injury going into last week. I don't have a lot of new information on those guys. Just in general, we'll formulate a plan for having increased participation from those guys over the course of the week, and we'll let the amount of that participation and the quality of that participation be our guide in terms of potentially including them. Those people are George Pickens with his hamstring, Deshaun Elliott with his hamstring, Larry Ogunjobi with his groin. There were some guys that went down in game that are going to be evaluated, and the doors are ajar for those guys. T.J. Watt, I just saw him walking around rather comfortably, but again, he's questionable with his ankle. We'll see where the roads lead us. Dante Jackson with his back, and Justin Fields with the abdominal injury that he sustained in play. But as I mentioned, none of these 6 guys could be characterized as out as I sit here today. We'll probably start with partial participation with them tomorrow and increase that and make decisions as the week goes on. Now, in reference to Baltimore, really excited about this opportunity. For obvious reasons, it's a divisional game. It's a road divisional game. It's Baltimore. And I understand
For the division crown
the
if
nature
you
of this
win.
rivalry and the amount of attention that it brings, and it's exciting and humbling to be a part of it. While at the same time, we got an opportunity to pursue a division championship this week. And so, man, we're excited. We respect this process of preparation. We're going to display our excitement by getting singularly focused on what it is that we need to do to prepare. That's what the staff's been doing really since the plane touchdown last night. And I'll outline these guys a little bit briefly. I think the most significant thing about them is the transformation that they're undergoing defensively. The last time we played these guys, they brought on Dean Pease as a senior advisor, if you will, a few weeks prior to our game, and I was wondering what that impact might mean, to be quite honest with you, the first game. Looking at the tape since the last time we played them, I see exactly what it means. Dean is a quality veteran defensive coach. We've competed against him a lot over the years. We're highly familiar with his schematics. And to be quite honest with you, man, a lot of what they're doing more recently, specifically since our game, looks a lot like Dean Pease football. They keep a lid on things. They mix up a variety of two high safeties and so forth. They don't give up big plays. They were 32nd in the league going in the passing game going into our last game. And since our last game, they've given up 2 passes of 20 yards or more. And that was just the other day versus the Giants. And so that speaks to a sea change. They're doing some things schematically different to minimize big plays. And I think Coach Pease is a significant component of it. But they also have shuffled some personnel, particularly on the back end. Last time we were getting ready to play those guys, they had Williams and Eddie Jackson at safety. They don't now. Washington has emerged as a safety. We saw big-time position flexibility between 14 and 44 the last time we played them. 14 was playing nickel and safety. 44 was playing outside corner and nickel. All of that settled down. 14 is playing safety. 44 is almost playing exclusively nickel. They've acquired White, and he played against us the last time, and his role continues to expand. I see a lot of settling of the division of labor, a solidifying of roles, and some altering of schematics that has done an awesome job of minimizing some of the explosion plays that kind of characterized them coming into this last game. And so that really has our attention. There's still the rough and tumble run defense group that they've been. They minimize explosion plays in that area of the game as well. They shed blocks, they come off blocks, they make tackles. They've got Mike Pierce back, who is a formidable run stopper, who is capable of being an additional hand in terms of minimizing the run. And so they've really settled some things down on defense, and they're making themselves a more difficult group to move the ball with, to score on. The tape tells me that. The statistics tell me that as well. And so, man, we're working with an edge, man. They're about as different as you can get defensively over the course of a month. And so we got some work ahead of us in that area. On the offensive side of the ball, man, it's more the same. You better deal with Mr. Jackson. If yesterday is any indication of where he is, he was 21 of 25. I think with 5
Against the
touchdowns
Giants,
passes.
but
I think
yes.
he had 60-plus yards rushing. He's distributing the ball around to a lot of people. Last time we played him, I think Mark Andrews was just getting his footing after having returned. Man, you see the relationship there, the depths of those waters and that relationship, particularly in the red area in weighty moments. But he's doing a good job of spreading the ball around.
Gotta say, Lamar throws it so well. I see the film, you guys don't, but he just throws it really well.
Who is an awesome complementary back to the big runner. He's good on the perimeter. He's good in the passing game. Man, we got our hands full in preparation for this one. But again, as I mentioned, we're highly familiar with these guys. But the same thing could be said, I'm sure, for them. They're highly familiar with us. I think that's what makes these games so exciting. The strategy so exciting. The process of preparing so exciting. And ultimately exciting for the fans. And so with that, I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mike, did you did you read the full report or read it about the end zone incident, and did you talk to the league for any reason about that?
I didn't read the pool report because I saw it as it happened, and I hadn't had a chance to talk to New York because I've been so focused on what's going on with Baltimore in the present day.
Just looking back, the decision to punt on 4th down, your defense has been on the field a lot already in the second half. What went into that decision to put them back out on the field?
You know, it was the distance. had it been inside of maybe 4th and 5, I probably would have definitively gone for it. We were outside of 5, it was 7. And obviously from an analytical perspective, the further you get away from the line of the game, the less probable you are of success. 4th and 7 probably would have required max protection as in terms of 4th and 5 or less, generally does not. And again, so we had 3 timeouts. It was about midway of the 4th. I took a chance and thought that we could maybe stop them and get the ball back and play the field position game based on the distance was a little bit too uncomfortable for me at that juncture. But make no mistake, there are 2 sides to that coin in terms of decision making, but I'm comfortable with the process that we went through at the time in terms of how we played that situation.
Mike, when you guys, they physically had the upper hand, you've got a short week, another physical game coming up. How do you address that physicality in practice, especially when you have limited pad time this time of year?
You don't. You don't. That is money already in the bank. That's why we approach team development the way that we do. That's why we tackle in Latrobe every day that we have pads on. That's why we do not run away from building skill in that area and a mindset in that area at the early stages of team development, because we realize you don't get an opportunity to recoup that, particularly with how practices are scheduled today in today's NFL. You get a limited number of padded practices, as you mentioned, at the early portions of the season. You get less at the end. And so that's why I'm so committed to hardening our group in the team development process, because as you mentioned, these physical games come down and you better be ready for them. And I'm comfortable with our level of readiness, although we didn't perform to our liking yesterday.
Mike, what's made it tougher for you guys to run the ball recently? What is it? Execution? What reasons would you give?
It's probably a little bit of all of the above. You got to compliment those that we compete against and their schematics and their players, environment, but also we absorb a lot of the responsibility of the quality of our play or the lack thereof. When you're not getting possession downs, particularly early in the game, that has a component of it too as well. There have been several games in the last several weeks of that time frame that you mentioned that we've been 3 and out to start games, and you never get an opportunity to gain run game traction or accumulate the total number of snaps to play that component of the game when you're 3 and out and you're slow to winning possession downs, and that's been a component of the issue as well.
You talked about the phrase warming up to the competition. Would you say that was part of the problem that you guys went through yesterday? And how do you counter that when you've seen it happen a few times this year?
I just use it as a catchphrase to describe not winning possession downs early in the game. And so I just use it in that way. But it's about execution. There's nothing mystical about it. It's about preparing and positioning guys to win in those weighty moments and executing. And we haven't done it consistently enough at the early stages of football games.
What was the explanation when Connor, I think, got head slapped on the punt? It was deemed post-play rather than during the play. Were you satisfied with that explanation?
I was not.
Respecting what you said last week when you were asked about kind of looking at these games as a 3-game chunk, you mentioned being on a 7-day cycle. You mentioned being on a 6-day cycle this week. From an evaluation of injury standpoint, now that you're at least in the playoffs, do you look at the injuries from just a 6-day cycle, or do you have to look at these 2 games more closely together because of the calendar crunch?
I think specifically regarding injury, it has nothing to do with the 6 or 7-day cycle. It's probably just a general mindset that you have regarding injury at the early portions of the season relative to now. At the early portions of the season, you always have a big picture mentality where small problems you don't want to become a big problem because of the totality of the games that lie ahead. When you get to this portion of the season, when the sand's running through the hourglass, that's not a component of decision making. Generally regarding people, if they're healthy and available, they go, and that's generally the mindset that we're in. This is a big game. We have an opportunity to solidify the division this week, and so rest assured the healthy people are going to play in this game. Those that are capable of playing are going to play in this game, and we're not going to look ahead to potentially what happens on the other side of it. We got definitive, tangible things to pursue this week, divisional championship, and I think that merits all hands on deck.
Rules on the committee and everything. Why is that penalty not considered? It happens during the play. Why is it considered post-play?
Again, I don't want to get into specifics of what was said to me in game or how that was administered. There's some controversy around it. I acknowledge that. But I just tend to focus my energies on the things that we could control in those environments. I know that when we play better, these discussions are less significant, and so I just want to play better, coach better.
It's rare that you guys give up allow two wide receivers to get over 100 yards in the same game. What did you guys have to do better? Was it more about
It's like
matchups
109,
and
110.
with specific spots, or were there certain alignments they caught you guys?
You know, I think it was a couple things. I thought, you know, obviously we had a schematic commitment to minimizing Saquon being the leading rusher in the league and how he had controlled so much it went on for that unit. But also, as I mentioned, we lost some critical third downs that were very winnable, and they produced subsequent downs. Those subsequent downs produced yards and potentially points. And we're not winning possession downs. They were, 10 of 17? We've been much lower than that over the course of the season, and particularly in recent weeks. And when you win those downs, you're off the field. And so, you know, I think a large component of the yards that you mentioned can be summarized into the lack of possession down execution, which produced more plays.
Balance the decision to play players or not play players when it comes to injuries at this time of the year, where maybe earlier in the season you might not want a small problem turn into a big problem, but you also have a division championship on the line.
As I mentioned, you know, we're playing for a division title this week. Those that are healthy will play.
You've already had some shuffling of.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You've already had some shuffling with your secondary with Dante Jackson's status a little bit up in the air this week. How do you kind of look to fill his production? Does a guy like Corey Trice, who hasn't really gotten a hat lately, get an extended look this week? Or
We got a lot of capable players in that space. We've been really comfortable with it. We've been blessed with some depth there. And so if people are unavailable, I am completely comfortable with those that get an opportunity to play, whether it's James Pierre, whether it's Corey Trice. You know, when called upon, both guys have delivered and delivered to a satisfactory level. And I'm confident in terms of how they practice and approach their business. And so I don't know that that's a big issue for us.
When you're in a game like yesterday in the second half and you know your possessions are limited and you're probably counting possessions, short of hoping you get off the field, does it change what you do or how you coach or anything like that?
You know, I don't know that I'm willing to acknowledge that at times, you know. I believe that our defense is capable of getting off the field, and that probably was a component of the decision making the punt on 4th and 7. I understand how the game was going, but I've been working with these guys day in and day out for a long time, and particularly in the weighty moments, I just got confidence in them. And that confidence is unwavering, even in face of what transpired yesterday.
Won a lot of games this year, adjusting in game to what opponents are doing and countering what they're doing. How do you apply that to the front part of the game and making that happen more so at the front of the end of the game, making the other team have to make those adjustments?
That's what you're talking about as it pertains to this week, or looking back at what's transpired.
Like last week, you talked about like, hey, like, you know, losing those certain possession downs and then having to be the team that makes those adjustments.
Yeah, there's a cat and mouse strategic component to it. We make adjustments and alter our plans. Our opponent does the same. It's just a component of ball this time of year. We all got a lot of tape out there in terms of describing what we are from a personality perspective, and it's just a strategic component of it.
Mike, Wade was going late. TJ's injury came with like under 4 minutes-ish to go. You're down a couple touchdowns. They have the ball on your side of territory. Chance to win looks like it's, you know, fading. Is there any discussion at the coaching staff to maybe take out some guys that you might need down the road?
No, because we play to win.
Anyone else?
You didn't have Alex in the last game against Baltimore. Preston was fairly new to you. How do you think he and Herbig handled things when they played, and how important just in general is the outside linebacker position when you face Lamar?
You know,
it's like what,
not
second
only
game
the outside
with
linebackers,
Preston?
but all the rushmen are a significant component when you face quarterback mobility, particularly Lamar Jackson. You know, the addition of Preston has been significant for us. He's a veteran. He knows what to do. He's highly skilled. He's done a nice job of fitting in. We've gotten quality production from our edge people, regardless of who's in the game, and I expect that to continue. But I'm also optimistic about the availability of TJ based on what I've seen today.
Like, I know you talk about nothing being mystical. You guys have been pretty successful against the Ravens of late. Can that provide any sort of mental advantage to your group?
You know, that's probably a better question for them to answer. I know
Give me
that
a
we expect
disadvantage,
the work that's ahead of us this
overconfidence.
week. We know that this performance stands alone. We're excited about the opportunity to pursue a division championship this week. But I think the totality of recent games and things of that nature from a mental perspective is probably better directed at those guys.
Anyone else? All right.
Thanks.
Okay. So let's see. Tomlin week 16. He kind of said, it's just pretty bad all around from players, coaches, just blame to go around. You can't have the mistakes on offense and defense that we had. The offense, whether it was penalties, fumble, missed blocks, missed tackles on defense, whatever it was. Like he said, we would have Saquon or Kenneth Gainwell just, okay, we got you. And it's just, the little shimmy shake and, a 2-yard loss turned into a 4-yard gain. So no incoming injury updates. The guys who went into the game injured. That would be GP, D. Elliott, and Larry O. We'll have to see how their participation in practice affects their game status. It was great hearing that TJ is walking comfortably, whatever that means. I assume that means no limping. Doesn't mean he's necessarily going to be able to jog or run around early in the week. But that's a hopefully take care of it. Maybe you don't practice the first couple of days and then you practice either in a limited or full capacity the last day, and you just kind of ramp up to the game versus the Ravens. Nobody being declared out right now, and he did not say anyone was doubtful, which is good. Everyone who is injured is a questionable. You win and you're division champs. That's like the easiest way to put that. That's probably your biggest motivation right there. Because, you won. You won a playoff spot this past week. You clinched that. Congratulations. But let's host a playoff game. Let's get the hats. Let's get the t-shirts. You're never going to say no to those. But getting those is a huge step towards competing. And I mean really competing. For, advancement in the playoffs. Let's see. So Baltimore, I didn't know that they brought in help for their defensive coordinator, which, the fact that they're making all of those big changes all over the defense, whether they're setting guys up in a different position or putting just new guys in, and not having other guys in, and new schemes, new concepts, whatever. So I had no idea that they did that. I wasn't aware. And usually I'm pretty good with hearing about league-wide news. I follow the major insiders. I follow the NFL Network, or not the NFL Network, the NFL. I follow a lot of things, and I didn't hear about that. So that's a very interesting thing, and it seems like their defense has played a lot better since that point. And I know this has been a topic of conversation. No one asked Tomlin about it. He didn't bring it up. But I just wanted to mention it really quick. And then that's the last thing I got to bring up. So I've seen people with the injury to George bring up the possibility of Roman Wilson potentially playing and coming off IR. So the thing about Roman is that if he wasn't a rookie, it might be a different story. But Roman is a rookie. And because of that, Mike Tomlin is going to be very, very reluctant to allow him to come into a game to come off IR. It is very possible we don't see Roman Wilson this year. Could we? Absolutely. But it's just right now, with how much time he missed in training camp, with how much time he missed during the course of this season, it may just end up being a redshirt year for him. And that's the thing. If he plays, he plays. But don't rely on it. I'll say that. Don't rely on it. So that is it for Mike Tomlin's press conference. That's all the notes I had. So if you guys did enjoy this, please do leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button, turn notifications on, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.